Good afternoon and welcome to the City of Glendale Civil Service Commission meeting for September 11, 2024. May we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Hatamian,
Here?
Commissioner McGrabian,
Here.
Chair Gazarian.
Here.
And for the record, Commissioner Reen is absent.
Thank you. Before we proceed, may we please take a moment in silence in observance of the victims of 9/11, the brave firefighters, law enforcement, and the civilians who lost their lives, gave their lives for our way of life in this country. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. Next item, please.
Minutes, approve the minutes from the July 10th, 2024 meeting.
Is there a motion? Do we have a quorum for that? I don't know, do we? We do? Yeah? Is there a motion?
I will make a motion to approve.
I will second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hatamian,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Chair Gazarian.
Yes, thank you. Next item, please.
Oral communications, I do not have any phone calls on the line, and we have not received any cards.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Recruitment and examination report.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, this is the regular recruitment and examination status report, which represents the current recruitments in process and that our team is currently working on. You'll notice that our team has 48 open recruitments, which again this month is a decrease from our last meeting. And thank you again to the HR staff for all of their hard work to reduce the inventory. This report identifies the division of work and the various stages of the examination and selection process. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is a note and file item.
Any questions?
No question.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Next item, please.
Eligible list established.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the subject before the commission are two regular reports that includes all of the eligible lists that were recently established since our last meeting in July. These reports are placed at your table as the August 14th report was not included in the original package, only September 11th. The reports include the total number of applications and the number of individuals that advance through the various stages of our examination processes. Since our last meeting, we have a total of 37 lists that were established. 16 were open to the public, 15 were given on a promotional basis, and 6 were given on an open and promotional basis. This is a note and file item. However, if the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do have one question, Ms. Adams. On the promotional examinations, I see the number of total applicants on some of them as 1. Can you please provide us with a little bit more details on that?
Are you looking at police bilingual examinations?
Yes.
Yes. So sometimes in the bilingual category, we will get one applicant. We will reach out to the police department and consult with them on whether or not they would like to review that applicant and move them forward so that they can join the next class for the academy if they meet all of the other requirements. So we will close the filing period just to move that one candidate along and then reopen it for additional candidates. So that's why you'll at times see just one applicant coming through, in particular on the bilingual.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Very well. Thank you, Ms. Adams. Next item, please. This didn't require any vote.
This is note and file.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Revised class specification and job bulletin for approval. General Manager, Glendale Water and Power.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you for approval tonight are the revised class specification and job bulletin for the executive level position of general manager for Glendale Water and Power. Our city manager plans to conduct an open recruitment to fill this general manager position, which will become vacant on October 2nd, 2024, due to an upcoming retirement. Before launching this process, the city manager is seeking to update the class specification that was last revised in December 2020 to attract a broader pool of applicants. Specifically, we propose reducing the minimum requirements for managerial experience in a utility or similar organization from 10 years to 8 years, while maintaining the requirement for 5 years at the division head or principal level with supervisor experience. In assessing this proposed change to the requirements, we have looked at 10 other cities in our region to gauge the compensation and requirements and to evaluate the market and the competitiveness. And we strongly believe that this change will aid in our having a successful executive recruitment. In accordance with Civil Service Rule 4, Section 3C, staff is also requesting the commission approve the job bulletin. Our city manager intends to work with our Human Resources Department and use an executive search firm to conduct the competitive recruitment process, and therefore a colorful brochure shall be promulgated using the approved job bulletin as a reference document. The essential functions and the minimum requirements listed on the job bulletin are consistent with the proposed updates to the class specification. Therefore, we are requesting your approval of the class specification and job bulletin for General Manager, Glendale Water and Power. We have our Senior HR Analyst, Russ Kwan, here, along with our City Manager, Rubik Galanian, to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions?
I do have one question.
Yes.
On page 11, under note, there's an entry that says an equivalent combination of experience, education, and/or training may be considered as a substitute for the listed minimum requirements.
Yes.
What types of equivalent things would you be looking for?
Well, it just depends, because sometimes an applicant will submit their application and say they have 8 years of leadership experience in a public works department, and their city did not have a utility, but maybe they had water functions. And they believe that that experience would qualify them to compete for the job. Well, that's something unique to the jurisdiction that they're coming from. We will read it, evaluate it, talk to the hiring manager. In this case, it would be the city manager or our executive recruiter. And we will identify if we believe the person is competitive and is worthy of an interview and to move through the process. So it's not like we are looking for something specific, but if an applicant submits their application and it doesn't exactly conform to what is written, we will evaluate it for its consideration and its worth.
I thought it was very well written. I just had that one question, but it was very well written. Thank you.
It is very well written. So my compliments to HR staff. I also had a similar question in regards to the minimum requirements. So it says 8 years of responsible management experience with a utility or similar organization. Are we saying, when we say similar organization, are we saying a public entity or a public utility or a public works entity?
It depends, because not all municipalities have a water and power department. And so, depending upon the composition of the organization, perhaps they have a public works director that oversees some of the functionality that we have within our water and power. Burbank, for example, does have a water and power. Anaheim does too, and Riverside, but it really just depends.
Okay, so when we say or similar organization, it's not gonna be somebody who just works in the government sector. It's gonna be someone who works in the government sector, but in a public utility.
A public utility or something similar, because what if they don't have power, but they have water? So it can be a water system, for example, or it can be power and water and utility. Some agencies, like segments of unincorporated county, while they may have Edison as a service provider for electricity, they contract out with, for example, California American Water Company for the delivery of water. However, if you reside in the city boundaries within Los Angeles, then you would have a full utility in the LADWP. Different jurisdictions operate differently. Some contract out with others, but whoever within that jurisdiction who oversees either the contracted service or if it's within the organization would be the comparable person that we would be looking at. In some instances, it may be the city manager themselves. In others, it may be a portion of Public Works. In other organizations, it may be a water executive leader. It just depends on how the city is organized and if they have those services under their umbrella or if they contract out for the services.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Well, they've covered it all. Is there a motion?
I will move to approve.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Tamian,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Chair Gazarian.
Yes, thank you. Next item, please.
Revised class specification and job bulletin for approval, Director of Public Works.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you for approval are the revised class specification and job bulletin for the executive level position of Director of Public Works. Our city manager plans to conduct a promotional recruitment to fill this director position, which is presently vacant. Before launching this process, the city manager, again, is seeking to update the class specification, last updated in 2018, to align with the current industry standards. Specifically, we propose reducing the minimum requirements for managerial experience in a public works organization from 10 years to 8 years. In addition to aligning with industry standards, we believe that we have several very well-qualified leaders who are eligible to apply for this executive level opportunity, and therefore we seek to advertise it on a promotional basis. This position will report directly to the city manager, who will be responsible for overseeing, directing all operations of the Public Works Department, including engineering, traffic, project management, integrated waste management, fleet services, facilities management, maintenance services, and transit services. Again, in accordance with Civil Service Rules 4, Section 3C, staff is also requesting commission approval of the job bulletin. The essential functions and minimum requirements listed on the job bulletin are consistent with the proposed updates to the class specification. Therefore, we are requesting approval of the class specification and job bulletin for Public Works Director. We have our HR analyst here, along with our city manager, Rubik Galanian, if you have any questions that you would like to ask them.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions?
I have no questions.
I have none.
Is there a motion?
I would like to move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call?
Commissioner Tamian,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Chair Gazarian.
Yes, thank you. Next item, please.
Revised class specification series for approval, tree trimmer series.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you for approval is the revised class specification for the tree trimmer series within the Public Works Department. The tree trimmer series was last updated in June 2009. The proposed revisions focus on updating the minimum qualifications for each classification within the series. The key changes is that the applicants for tree trimmer and senior tree trimmer will now be required to obtain a Class A driver's license by the end of their probationary period. New hires without this license will receive in-house training from the city to help them meet this requirement. Additionally, to broaden the pool of qualified candidates, the Public Works Department is proposing to reduce the required years of experience across all classifications within the series. This change is in response to the challenges the industry is currently facing in recruiting and retaining qualified personnel. The Glendale City Employees Association has reviewed these proposed changes, and as of the agenda's posting, they have not raised any concerns. Therefore, we recommend that the revised class specification for the tree trimmer series be approved as submitted. We have here tonight our urban forester, Lauren Click, who, along with our HR analyst, is also here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do have one question. So with the Class A driver's license, what happens if during employment the employee loses their driving privileges?
I'm going to ask the HR analyst to come and address that question.
Good afternoon, Aldo Hart, I'm Human Resources.
Hi, Ando. It's not a trick question, by the way.
So your question was what happens if they lose their driving privileges?
Yes, which I've experienced just through working in the government sector myself, where there's been employees who come in, they have their driver's license privileges, maybe they get a DUI or something happens, and they no longer have their driver's license. Can they still be employed as a tree trimmer?
The short answer is no, but we do look for ways to address those issues, possibly lower down the classification to another classification where it doesn't require a Class A driver's license.
Okay, so the Class A driver's license is required at the end of probation and throughout employment.
Correct.
Okay, so I would just make a recommendation to maybe add that in the license section.
It is.
I just saw where Class A driver's license with applicable endorsement by the end of the probationary period. I would want to add and throughout employment. So if you have an issue that does come up of that nature, and this is just recommendable with any other classifications that you may have that a driver's license is required, because if the employee then, for whatever reason, loses their driver's license privileges, you can always reference back to the minimum requirements if you ever needed to take any type of a lowering of the specs and or disciplinary measures if you needed to.
Any other questions?
I completely understand what Commissioner Hatamian is saying. We could also put valid California A driver's license, period, and for those applicants, or for those employees who do not have it at time of hire, to obtain it by the end of their probation and for continuation throughout. So that it's super clear that you need that the entire time that you're employed.
From what I recall, we do have some classifications where we can incorporate similar language, as you mentioned, ability to maintain the minimum qualification, ability to maintain a
Exactly.
commercial driver's license. We can add that on under the ability section.
Okay.
Would that work?
So long as,
Absolutely.
yeah, so long as I think if it's articulated in here, going down the road, if you have those unfortunate circumstances where the employees do lose their driving privileges, you can always reference back to the job bulletin and the minimum requirements. It'll be It'd be easier for you guys to then decide what the next appropriate administrative actions will be.
May I add something?
Of course, absolutely.
Hi there. Although the idea of giving them until the end of their probationary period so they could train in-house sounds really like a good idea, my concern is it takes a long time to hire someone. It's a long, arduous, expensive process. So what happens when someone does not get that license by the end of the period? It's almost like you invested so much time and money on this candidate and on this employee, and they did not meet the minimum requirement for the position. So in essence, while we're trying to make things easier for the city to hire people, it might backfire and be more expensive.
That is a great question, Commissioner McGrabian. That is why we have a probationary period in place. So that allows plenty of time that we provide the training necessary for them to be successful within the 6 months. That includes working with a vendor that we've always historically and we've been working with throughout the years. So they're very well versed with our organization. They know our various departments, divisions, and they know our staff, our management staff. So that is something that we have done continuously, and we believe will be successful in hiring somebody with the necessary skills to obtain those within the 6-month period. And that is a good question, because I did check. 6 months is plenty of time to go through the training and take the test and obtain it. If they're not successful, we can always terminate them.
Right.
And also, within the civil service rules, this is a position that has a 6-month probationary period. So if there was a situation and the party needed additional time, I do have the ability to extend their probation to ensure that they get the license before passing them. So we would engage with the hiring department. Termination is not always the best route. Sometimes people need some additional time, and within the rules, I do have that flexibility to give additional 6 months if it comes to that.
I like that a lot. You were going to add something?
I was just gonna say, so are we open to adding the language that throughout employment they maintain the driver's license, or are we gonna presume that's already written in the language that a valid California driver's license is part of the minimum requirements and leave it the way it is? I would like to hear from my commissioners.
So Commissioner Hatamian, I'm open to that, but before we go there, I'd like some clarifications on that area and one additional matter, and then we can discuss what language we want to add. So Vardanian, I'm looking at the series and I see tree trimmer, senior tree trimmer, and arborist crew supervisor, correct?
Correct.
So when I look at tree trimmer, I see licenses and certifications, and I see valid Class C California driver's license. I also see valid Class A by the end of the probationary period. I see the same requirements for the senior tree trimmer, Class C, and Class A by the end of probationary period. And finally, when I look at the arborist crew supervisor, I only see Class A. I don't see Class C. Now, I don't profess to know the job requirements that call for having a Class C and a Class A by the end of a probationary period. I don't know why one needs to have one when they are able to work with a Class C license and go about trimming trees, and I'm referring to the tree trimmer now. But by some point in time, they're supposed to have a Class A. Are they going to be a better tree trimmer if they have a Class A? I doubt it. They probably are going to be able to drive equipment, vehicles that require Class A. So I'm assuming that with a Class C, they're also going to be able to drive vehicles that are only requiring a Class C license to be driven around town trimming trees. I don't know, and I don't want to speculate. My question is, if Class A is a condition of a probation, but while that person is employed for 6 months or however long the probation is, they can fulfill the duties of the duties of a tree trimmer or even a senior tree trimmer with a Class C license. What is the purpose of the Class A? That seems to be a requirement, and a requirement from the outset for the crew supervisor.
Chair Gazarian, if I may refer Mr. Click, our urban forester, to answer that question. I think it's more appropriate.
And that's fine, and I want you to remain there, and if you, perhaps you or the, Mr. Crew Supervisor, no, it's not the crew supervisor, what's your name, sir? Please come up.
Urban Forester.
Mr. Forster, thank you. Could you, at the same time, one of you, let me know, why is it that the senior tree trimmer, who used to be required to direct the work of 2 to 3 tree trimmers, now that person is directing the work of tree trimmers? How many tree trimmers do we have? Do we have one senior tree trimmer that's going to direct the work of all tree trimmers? And do we have 2 or 3 tree trimmers, or 15 or 20 tree trimmers, if you can tell me that?
Yeah, Commission Chair. So we currently have an arborist crew supervisor, 1 arborist crew supervisor, 2 senior tree trimmers, and, well, 1 of which is vacant, and 2 tree trimmers, as well as 2 maintenance workers as the entry-level position, not within this series.
So what about the Class C, and then 6 months later, Class A? What's that about?
It's an excellent question. We have a wide range of equipment in terms of doing our operations. So the booms that we use on a daily basis, these are shorter booms. Think of the work you see on streetlights or stop signs. And a Class C is all that's necessary to drive those pieces of equipment. And that is the bulk of our work. Likewise with some of our lighter duty trucks. However, we do have 50-foot booms, which require a Class A. We also have some larger vehicles, or in terms of times of emergency, we need to step in and drive some of the heavier equipment, not within our section, but within, say, our street section, in terms of helping to clean up debris flows or fallen trees. And that's something that can only be possible with a Class A, and that's why the request for this requirement.
So, very well. Is it fair to then conclude that when someone is retained as a tree trimmer or a senior tree trimmer, and for a period of time they only have a Class C license, the fact that perhaps they fail to acquire the Class A license within the probationary period, and HR or your department decides to extend probationary period, they don't all of a sudden become useless to the city. They continue performing duties by utilizing vehicles that require only a Class C license, and at some point you folks make the decision whether it's worth keeping that person on probation further, or because it's a probationary period, decide that they did not successfully complete the probationary period and then discharge them. Is that correct?
I think that's a fair characterization, if I understood you correctly, Commission Chair. We have other employees within this classification who do have Class A, who, if necessary, can drive those vehicles, where our jobs always require a few employees, at least 2 to 3 employees, to maintain a safe work zone.
Yes.
So we will have that.
Okay, thank you. If my fellow commissioners have any follow-up questions based on mine, please stand by. Otherwise, I'll entertain whatever language you wanted to add.
I did have, you mentioned something about there's other similar classifications that do have these licenses currently that are reporting to you. So let's say the senior tree trimmers. Are they all Class A and Class C currently, or are these new requirements that are being added? Basically, are they required to have additional licenses in this current exam?
Commissioner, no. So the Class A is the license that our current senior tree trimmers have. And so the Class C would be the general classification for driving, and that's where we're asking to have that classification rather than beginning at the Class A, higher level of endorsement for additional types of equipment.
Okay, got it. So Class A's and Class C's are required even for prior senior tree trimmers. This is not something, a new requirement that we're adding.
Correct.
Gotcha.
As I understand the new requirement, before they were required to have Class A before they applied for the position or at the time of application, but now they're extending their time to be able to obtain it through probation.
Through the probationary period.
I do have a couple of more questions. Chair Gazarian, you mentioned something really interesting, and when I looked at it, I noticed a discrepancy. For the arborist crew supervisor on page 32, the Class A California driver's license doesn't give this applicant until the end of the probationary period to obtain the license, so I don't know if that was intentional or inadvertent.
Yes, Commissioner, that is intentional.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so. Yeah, because if that person is a supervisor, crew supervisor, and is going to assume the role of a senior tree trimmer or a tree trimmer if need be, it may require utilization of that heavy machinery that requires the Class A license. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you for the clarification.
Exactly correct.
I do have a concern for this person not being required to have a Class C, because Class C is the one that we all have when we drive a car. So if this person is not required to have a Class C and they're a supervisor,
So let me address that, because I don't think you can have a Class A license without having a Class C privilege. So, yeah.
so it doesn't hurt to just add it there, but it's weird to not have it there.
Well,
Would that be the same for the other positions? If you're gonna get a Class A at the end of probation, is it presumed that you would have had also have your
Right.
Class C?
you can't have a Class A without having a Class
Exactly,
C.
so might as well just add the Class C to the arborist crew supervisor as well.
Well, but here's the problem with that, Commissioner McGrabian. If you put a Class C and a Class A, you are likely to confuse the applicants, because they may think that a Class C is going to get them through the door. Class A infers that you already have a Class C license.
I see, okay, I
Yeah.
see what you mean.
So if you
the
don't have a
other-
Class A, don't apply for a arborist crew supervisor position. That's very clear.
Got it.
And those who, I happen to, in my line of work, come across many commercial drivers with issues that Commissioner Hatamian referred to, you know, DUIs and whatnot. They all know when they have a Class A license, the requirements of maintaining a Class A license are far stricter. While they may lose the Class A license, that does not mean that they necessarily lose a Class C license privilege.
Very
Yeah.
true. Okay, this makes sense. I just wanted to also add that when I was 19, I was a summer camp counselor and I had a Class B driver's license. It's taken me about 30 years to tell you all how proud of that I was.
Was that a Class B?
It was a Class B. I was
What is
driving a
that?
van. It was like a bus, like a
Somewhere in
small
between.
bus with children.
Oh, wow.
It was
Okay.
exciting. It's never been relevant for 30 years for me to announce that, so I just have to add.
Well, I'm excited that they decided to renew my Class C license by mail today.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have one more question, if you don't mind. There was, on page 31, under additional minimum requirements, the last sentence is, some experience as a lead worker is required. It seems so vague to say some. Are we looking at 6 months, 1 year, it just seems like almost futile to put that language in there with that kind of ambiguity.
Sorry, Commissioner, could you repeat the
Page
page and the
31.
phrase I'm flipping?
Page 31, additional minimum requirements.
I see.
And it says 2 years of recent paid experience in trimming trees, including climbing and operation of aerial devices. Some experience as a lead worker is required. So the word some is really, really, really vague.
I do see that line now, Commissioner. The intent with that sentence is, this is a senior tree trimmer, so typically they would be directing a crew of a tree trimmer classification as well as a maintenance worker, occasionally some GOA hourlies. And so the idea was that to apply for that position, there would be some similar types of work that have occurred either within the city or if this is an open position.
I feel like if we're going to say, it would almost be like easier to just get rid of the word some and say experience as a lead worker is required, or prior experience, and leave it at that. And then at the hiring process, you can decide whether whatever experience they have is sufficient. Because the way we have it now as some, it just reads awkward.
So Commissioner McGrabian is now reading my mind. When I see that sentence, I see that the author has written it with leaving some flexibility in mind on the part of the employer.
Right.
Because somebody may apply and they may have 3 months of experience as a lead worker, but you, the employer, may think that's insufficient to constitute some experience, and that your idea of some experience is 6 months experience. It may end up becoming an issue at some point. I was comfortable with it. That's why I did not bring it up when I wanted to say the things that I said earlier. But I believe that Ms. McGrabian's suggestion, Commissioner McGrabian's suggestion, as to prior experience as a lead worker is required, may also, look, somebody can say, I have prior experience. For 1 week, I was the lead worker, and you might say that's not sufficient. But do you want to also corner yourself and say 6 months experience as a lead worker, 45-day experience? I suspect you do not. So I'm not really having too much of a heartburn about that word. Whether you say some, prior, unless you're prepared to put a specific period of time, it's not going to make a difference. To me.
Or you could say highly desirable to give yourself some flexibility, some additional flexibility, but if you're putting the word required, it's not helpful to not have a set amount of a requirement. So that's why that sentence is really vague, and I could see it creating problems for the hiring committee down the line.
If I may chime in, Commissioner, so if you look at the supervisor position on page 32, the level of experience, it says 6 months of experience as a lead worker or a supervisor is required. So we know for a supervisor, 6 months of experience as a lead is required. And then so when you go back to the senior tree trimmer, you have some experience. So I do agree with Commissioner McGrabian. You may want to say desirable, make it a desirable and get rid of the word some. And make it 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be, but it's a desirable, so it still gives you leverage, but it's still clear enough for the applicant that that's a desirable. And so if you have 2 applicants and one has no experience as a lead, and one, as Commissioner Gazarian said, has 10 days of experience, and another one that has 6 months, that's when you'll be able to evaluate it, right, as to who you're going to give that desirable weight to and how much in the hiring process.
That would work.
Okay. We can look at this from both perspectives. I think, and I say this with the utmost respect to the two of you, I think we should leave this alone, because required means required. They may decide that 10 days of experience is sufficient requirement versus another person's 60 days of experience. But the minute you make it desirable, then it's not necessarily required. They want it to be required. They want it to be required. I'm going to honor their wish that they want that to be a requirement. The question of some experience, I think we have to, at some point, at the risk of not at the risk of, so that we do not micromanage. If they're comfortable, if you're comfortable with some experience and you're going to assess what that some experience is going to be sufficient for you, I'm comfortable. If my fellow commissioners want to change the language, they can outvote me. There's only 3 of us, and we can start talking about rewriting everything. I urge us not to.
So there's 2 ways to go about it to provide clarity. One is you make it a desirable and you put in however much experience you want. The other one is just to leave it as a requirement and put in some time to make it clear to the applicant as to how much experience you want. And the only reason I say this isn't to nitpick. The reason I say this is for consistency, because when you look at the arborist crew supervisor, we do articulate it on there as to how much experience is required. So the question is going to be, why do we provide some specificity there and none here?
Chair
Because they're a
Kazarian, if
supervisor.
I was just going to say, I think early on, the suggestion was to change the word some to prior, and that might be okay with staff. So if you want to make a motion that incorporates the changes that were being offered with regard to prior, and then the other, I think, suggestion that you had, we could see if that
Are
gets.
you okay with that, Mr. Forster? Are you comfortable with prior experience as a lead worker is required as a sentence in your specification?
Yes, Commission Chair, I'm comfortable with that.
Because your comfort is also as important to me as as the comfort of the imaginary issues that may come up. Okay, because I don't think they will. I disagree with my fellow commissioners. I love them, but I disagree with them.
I appreciate disagreement because it
All right.
allows us all to look at it and make sure that we're doing the best possible service for the department to hire the best possible qualified applicant without creating a possibility of ambiguity, confusion, potential liability, opening up. So I do appreciate all of the comments by my fellow commissioners, and Chair Gazarian, thank you for mentioning the difference between desirable and required. I appreciated that comment.
Thank you for that. What about the language you folks
So
want?
this is, yeah, so it's great that we're making this change. I think it's fantastic. I think you do want to hear both sides and then make your decision. I do think that if you have somebody that comes in and says, well, I wasn't hired and I had some experience, the more clear you make it, it's going to be easier for you down the line to answer those questions. If it's a what-if scenario, right? If that circumstance does come up. As far as the language throughout employment with the Class A, I guess I'll pose it to you. Do you find it to be important for throughout employment for these folks to maintain their Class A, or do you have other duties that they can be doing?
Commissioner, I think it's very important to maintain the Class A.
Okay, very good. So long as you agree with that, I would just make a motion to include that language where it says valid Class A California driver's license with applicable endorsements by the end of the probationary period and throughout employment. We can include this for the tree trimmer, we can include this for the senior tree trimmer, and also for the arborist crew supervisor.
The supervisor already, it says endorsement at the, yes, I see it.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes,
Absolutely.
of course.
So typically what we do is we can address for all three positions within the series, and we can put under ability to maintain commercial driver's license throughout employment, and that will apply to all three.
It's a requirement, not ability.
Ability to maintain is a requirement. It's just a different way of saying it. This is what I want. I don't want us to do this, folks. I don't want us to write their job specification because of our stylistic differences.
Go ahead, can you repeat that? I'm sorry. I
So
didn't catch
under
the word.
ability to maintain
Yeah.
commercial driver's license throughout employment.
I think just maintain.
When
the
an
ability-
employee,
Ability to maintain means ability to have the Class A license.
ability to maintain commercial driver's license throughout employment. The reason why I say that is because it's consistent with other class specs, similar class specs.
I like the consistency aspect
Yeah, so long
of
as
it.
there's consistency with people who are required to maintain Class C or
I
Class
like
A.
inconsistency. They like that, so you got them with that. That's
I'm
good.
not a big fan of the word ability. I would just say maintain, but so long as that's consistent throughout your class specs, I'll leave that up to you folks at HR, whether or not in the future you want to move away from the word ability. But if that's what you've been using to articulate that you need to have this driver's license, whether it's a Class A or a Class C for sworn, so be it.
Thank you.
Are we done? Are we good?
So you're looking for a motion now to incorporate the two changes that were proposed here?
Yes.
Under ability to, the language that you said, and won't repeat it because it's on tape. And then the language as it relates to changing it from some to prior experience. And I think that's probably your motion.
Yes.
Are you making that motion?
I can make that motion, but you did so well. Okay, so moving along. We will, in the ability section, include the language that HR typically will include for the ability to maintain Class C and Class A driver's license, and however you deem fit. So you guys are, essentially, you folks are gonna come back to the commission for us to adopt a new bulletin, right? Or are you just gonna make the changes?
No, I think what your motion is, and if I could restate it,
Please.
we're adding under the language ability to, the language that you just proposed with regard to the licenses, and then under the some experience, changing the language from some experience to prior experience, and with those amendments to this bulletin, your motion is to approve it with those two changes. And so then we would look for a second to get that approved.
Yes, my motion is to approve.
And I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Tamian,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Chair Gazarian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Job bulletin for approval, budget analyst.
Thank you. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you for approval is the open job bulletin for the position of budget analyst in the finance department. This item was initially scheduled to be presented to the commission at the August 14th, 2024 meeting. However, due to the cancellation of that meeting, Chair Gazarian administratively approved the item. We are now bringing it back before the commission for formal approval. The budget analyst serves as a budget liaison to various city departments, providing technical assistance in formulating and monitoring budgets. This role includes performing budget projections, fiscal analysis, and researching legislation, related to revenues, expenditures, and general governmental financing. Under Civil Service Rule 4, Section 3D, this bulletin requires commission approval because it was previously recruited on a promotional basis in 2023. At that time, only one candidate met the minimum qualifications and was appointed to the position. Due to the specific requirements of this role and the limited pool of qualified internal candidates, the Finance Department is seeking approval to post the job bulletin on an open basis in order to attract a broader pool of applicants. The job bulletin is consistent with the budget analyst class specification previously approved by the commission. Additionally, the Glendale Management Association has been informed of this request to post open and has not raised any concerns. Therefore, we recommend that the bulletin be approved for posting as submitted. We have our Assistant Director of Finance here, Shuju Lee, along with HR staff who are here to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Meg Rao. I'm the analyst handling this one.
Good evening. My question is for page 36, 4 items from the bottom up. This analyst, it says, among other duties, analyzes and follows up on legislation related to revenues. Can you give me an example of what that would look like, please?
Thank you. I'm going to ask if I can bring up the subject matter expert on this.
Of course.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commission Chair and Commissioners. My name is Shujing Lee, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Finance Department. Regarding the question that the Commissioner just asked, so as a revenue manager, so basically part of the person's job functions will be actively looking for possible new revenue sources for the city or increase the city's revenue sources. For example, one of the city's revenue right now is utility user tax. So that's always like a laws or regulations to regulate how the city can charge the UUT taxes. So that's why the revenue manager may need to monitor the legislative changes, and also can be like property tax or sales tax. Sometimes the state or the county can change laws and regulations affecting those taxes. So that's why part of this job function is to need to monitor those legislative changes.
That makes total sense. Could we change the word analyze to monitor then? I think we've been through this before, and that everyone who's sitting on my right and left is tired of me saying this. I have a really hard time with the word analyze legislation or analyze law or analyze statutes by someone who doesn't have a law degree. So the word identify or monitor, because in your answer, you mentioned the word monitor multiple times. Would you be comfortable to add the word monitor versus the word analyze?
I think it's okay.
Would everyone here feel comfortable with that? With my fellow commissioners and?
I think so long as we remain consistent with the other classifications that we've looked at, where you've raised the same concern,
We did
Commissioner.
change that language. Lucy, I don't remember what we wrote. I think we wrote review.
We
review
can
and
go back.
identify.
We could go back and mirror the language if that would make you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, because it analyzes, attorneys have a hard enough time analyzing legislation. But the word monitor was used, identify, so as I understand your answer, you're looking for laws and legislation that would give the city more money.
Yes, that's the goal for revenue manager, to
Beautiful.
look for revenues.
So monitor and identify legislation and follow up for additional revenue sources would still be an accurate description of the job duty, correct?
Yes, I think so.
I would propose to remove the word analyze and replace it with identify and monitor.
So in my opening, I identified that this bulletin was administratively approved when we didn't have a quorum at our last meeting.
Oh.
And so this bulletin has already been promulgated to the public and is open for filing. However, what we can do is we can go back and look at the approved language from earlier discussion, and we can, at our next meeting, assert to you that going forward, we would apply that same level of consistent verbiage as it relates to non-lawyers having some sort of analysis within their job functions.
I appreciate that. I don't want to delay for this job, this job being filled, the vacancy from being filled. But I do want to, not give analysis job duties to people who don't have the qualifications for that function.
Understood.
Ms. Adams, on that note, since we're not gonna, make changes, and as we move forward, maybe we can implement certain changes. On the requirement of the valid Class C California driver's license for administrative functions, it being a minimum requirement, does the city have the habit to say valid Class A California driver's license or the ability to utilize alternative methods of transportation? So just in case, if you have an administrative classification and the individual happens to take public transportation, but they do not have a valid Class C license, to ensure that you're opening up your pool of applicants. Because I know with other jurisdictions, they'll put that in there as an or for administrative functions, and it opens up their pool, because not everybody, especially with the way things are now with insurance expenses and how things have gotten expensive, a lot of people do utilize public transportation. Some folks don't even feel comfortable driving. So there's a fiscal component to it. There's a comfort component where people do utilize public transportation. Like I said, with other jurisdictions, I have seen that language. And has the city used that type of language before?
I have not seen that type of language, but this is a very interesting point. There are applicants that we've been introduced to recently who prefer to use car service, transportations, and other modes to move themselves around the city. So your suggestion is something that we can certainly incorporate going forward, even though I have not seen it to date yet. But it is a very valid and interesting observation. Yes, sir.
So I can say that with certain functions where they have to do field duties, so that means they have to report from one location to the next. So let's say given this position, if this individual would have to report to a location in a different place in the city to work with management there to do their budget, then I can see how you can say the driver's license is required so they can transport themselves. But if they're gonna come to a single location and do budgetary work, which most of these positions tend to do so, that may be a recommendation that I would make to the city to kind of consider, because we have seen successes on our end at the county where we offer that option, and it's a or, but like I said, it boils down to management whether or not they feel comfortable making it a requirement or not. Does this person have to travel frequently as they are in the office? And if so, how frequent is it? Can they use an Uber to go from one location to the next to do their meeting and come back? Because sometimes that is, for a lot of folks, that is cheaper than having a vehicle or having insurance and having to pay for gas and parking.
Yeah, I think that this is something that we would need to discuss individually with hiring managers, because we are a smaller city and we don't always have the flexibility for ride sharing today. I think that I would need more information from the hiring manager to understand how often their personnel have to move around and to what locations, and if carpooling and other options are available. But I hear the point loud and clear, and we will consider it going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
I guess my follow-up question is there a specific reason why a Class C driver's license is required for this specific position?
I don't really think there's a specific reason. I think it probably just in the job bulletin there, but honestly, I don't really think it has to have one, because the person going to work in a finance location, even though maybe once in a while the person may need to go to other departments like library or public work, but there are other means we can available, like Teams meeting or get a pool car from the city. But honestly, I don't really know we really have to require a valid driver license for this position.
So maybe for this position, it's desirable, but I don't know that we can make that statement across the board. I just don't have enough information to state that.
It does make sense to review it position by position on a case-by-case basis. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
To evaluate each position with its driving requirements and desirability to see what you need, because if you put highly desirable, maybe someone who doesn't drive but has every ability to come to work every day is perfectly capable of doing this job.
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioner. I think you want to open up your pool of candidates. You may have a very qualified person that just may not want to drive. And in fiscal, people, I don't know, just from my experience, are fiscally conservative and savvy. So if I'm living around the area and I don't have a driver's license and I can walk to work and I can take the bus, and I automatically do not qualify for this exam, but I may be a very good applicant. And so now we've just completely X'd that person out. So you can make it a desirable, or you can make it or alternative form of transportation, where you still have some leverage as an employer to in the future change things if you want. But and I appreciate your candor. You're very honest, and I appreciate that. But what we don't want is, it was in the job bulletin and we kind of just left it there, right? You, as a manager, you kind of want to look at it and see what you can do to make your pool bigger, and this will definitely give you that ability.
Yeah, I mean, after hearing your comments, that do make me think further, like, does this job really need a driver license? Yeah, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
No.
Is there a motion?
The motion is to make the driver's license a desirable based on the
Oh, you mean
information.
there's an amendment before the motion? I thought we were going to leave them alone on this.
We were going to take this
Oh,
back
that's
for
right. We
consideration.
couldn't, this has been already been
administratively
issued.
approved this already,
Got
so this
The reason I didn't
feedback.
say anything is because I've already administratively approved it. That's why I did not engage in any of this discourse.
Got it.
Because how could I if I approved it and all of a sudden now I'm questioning it? I did it because we had to, because we did not have a meeting and they needed to get this thing going. So if you want to make any amendments, but isn't this already out there or no?
This has been promulgated to the public already.
So we'll leave, Mr. Chair Gazarian, we'll leave this as is, and we'll just make a note moving forward to, for us to kind of take a closer look on whether or not driver's license should be required by HR staff and even by the commission and by management. And so that it'll definitely open up your pool. I've experienced that myself. And, you know, the thing with writing job bulletins, I think it's great when we go back to our old templates. I've seen that a lot, but I think it's also good just to kind of really sink our teeth into the actual job and see whether or not the things that we're listing should be on there or not. And this is just a general comment, it doesn't have to do with this, with the tree trimmers, you know, it was very evident, and I know Lauren on a personal level just because he's been to my house before where we've had trees that were falling over. I know he's an amazing guy, and I know he uses a lot of discretion. But I also know that it's very important for him to have that requirement that throughout employment that they maintain the driver's license. So these are some questions that I think will come up with the analyst and management. So the job bulletins could better fit the city's needs and management's needs, right?
Mr. Chair, I do think that we need a motion to approve, but I think we also need to provide some direction to staff. So if I could propose, I think the motion would be to approve the job bulletin, but then also to direct staff to review the section as it relates to the word analysis and also as it relates to the driving license requirements and provide, I guess, maybe a memo back to the board, to the commission as to what the prior report back to the board essentially with what the prior language was and going forward to make note of the proposed changes from the commission. So your motion would be to approve the bulletin and direct staff on those 2 points.
Commissioner Hatamian, do you adopt our
I will make a
legal
motion.
advisor's language as your motion?
Yes, so I'll make a motion to approve with the noted items provided by our council.
And I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Tamian,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Chair Gazarian.
Thank you, yes. Next item, please.
Class specification series for approval, accounting series, and accounting management series.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you for approval are the revised class specifications for the accounting series and the accounting management series in the finance department. These series were last updated in December 2014. The proposed revisions aim to update job duties, minimum qualifications, and to streamline the structure, eliminating certain classifications within each series. The department is recommending elimination of Accountant 3 and Principal Accountant positions within their respective series, as these roles have become obsolete over time and have remained unfilled for an extended period. Removing these classifications will improve operational efficiency within the accounting section and provide clearer pathways for recruitment and promotion, benefiting employees seeking advancement to higher classifications. In addition to eliminating these classifications, the department proposes updating the minimum qualifications and job duties to better align with the current responsibilities of each role. Notably, the Accountant 1 position will have its experience requirement removed, as it is an entry-level role. The Accounting Supervisor and Accounting Manager positions will see a reduction in the required supervisory and leadership experience, with the supervisor requiring 6 months and the manager requiring 2 years. These changes will give the department greater flexibility in attracting qualified candidates during recruitment. Both the Glendale City Employees Association and the Glendale Management Association have reviewed the proposed changes and at the time of the agenda's posting have not raised any concerns. Therefore, we recommend that the proposed revised class specifications for the accounting series and the accounting management series be approved as submitted. It is also worth noting that with the reduction in supervisory leadership experience, the city has launched a new supervisory and leadership academy. We have hired a new training and development manager. So all rising supervisors and other leaders have access to a full-time person who can give guidance on supervisory issues if the newly appointed supervisor is encountering certain things for the very first time. Therefore, we don't believe that reducing the minimum qualifications at appointment would propose any significant obstacle to the party being successful in their new role. We have, again, our Assistant Director of Finance here, Shu Jun Lee, along with HR staff, and they are here to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Any questions? You don't have to look for questions if you don't have any.
I just have I guess I have a concern, and I understand exactly what we just heard about someone in a supervisory role helping to lead and supervise these people in this position. So that's why there's no concern with the minimum requirements being removed. But I have a really hard time looking at an accountant position and saying they require no accounting or financial background, and they don't require any sort of educational background. It just doesn't sit so easy.
So where does it say that? Show me.
It's for the accountant one, the education used to be a bachelor degree, now it's completely removed, and there's no finance, no accounting experience required, and only office experience is desirable. Yet the position works with refund requests, cash receipts, invoices, and other financial documents, with zero experience and only office experience desirable. So if this person, let's say, was an Uber driver and decided to work in this position, what sort of experience do they have to successfully perform this position?
That's a very valid concern. I'd like to hear your response to that.
Good afternoon, commissioners. That's a very good question. The bachelor's degree is not removed. So if we go to page 44, under education and training, we have deleted the varies with classification and applied bachelor's degree for all class specs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's put elsewhere, applicable to all the other series?
Correct.
Yes.
That makes much more sense. Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Looks like maybe we might move past this item quicker. Any motions?
Oh, new trick for
I'm
me
looking
would
at
be
that
so
clock.
hard.
I don't want to say what time I have to leave. I just didn't think it was going to be this long. Sorry. So, but there's going to come a point where I have to leave, and I'm trying to avoid giving that time frame. I don't want to rush anybody.
How about I make a motion?
Go for it.
I make a motion to approve the entire accounting series as presented.
I'll second.
Roll call quickly.
Commissioner Hatamian,
I'm just giving my fellow commissioners a hard time. Go ahead.
Commissioner Hatamian,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Chair Gazarian.
Yes, thank you. Next item, please. Ms. Adams? I'm sorry, not Ms. Adams. Mr. Kwan?
Job bulletin for approval, records administration analyst.
Yes, Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you for approval tonight is the open job bulletin for the position of Records Administration Analyst in the City Clerk's Department. This item was originally scheduled for presentation at the August 14, 2024 Commission meeting, but due to the cancellation of that meeting, Chair Gazarian administratively approved this item. tonight we are bringing it back for formal approval. The Records Administration Analyst is responsible for overseeing the coordinating a citywide centralized records management program. This includes implementing and ensuring compliance with policies and procedures related to the creation, classification, maintenance, storage, destruction, and disposal of all records, documents, and related information. Additionally, this role assists with coordinating municipal elections and city council agendas, while also supervising staff in the city clerk's department. In line with Civil Service Rule 4, Section 3D, the department seeks approval to recruit for this position on an open basis. The position was last recruited on a promotional basis in 2018, yielding only one qualified candidate. Given the specific requirements of this role, opening this recruitment process will help broaden the pool of qualified applicants. The open job bulletin aligns with the current class specification. The Glendale Management Association has reviewed the open job bulletin and has not raised any concerns. Therefore, we recommend that the proposed job bulletin for Records Administration Analyst be approved as submitted. We have our Assistant City Clerk here with us this evening, along with our HR analyst, who can answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just have a quick comment on page 56 pertaining to California driver's license, just the same comment regarding utilizing alternative forms of transportation if possible in the future.
But if you look at it here, it says may drive on city business.
And that's why the consideration should come in whether or not that's even required.
Yes, understood.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. No other questions.
Any other questions?
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
So, Ms. Varbetin, do we need to be reported back from the city staff to us about that? No, not right now.
No.
No, okay, all right, thank you. Go ahead.
I move to approve the job bulletin as written.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hartamian,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Chair Kazarian.
Yes, thank you. Next item, please.
Job bulletin for approval, caseworker 1.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you for approval is an open job bulletin for the position of Case Worker 1, Workforce Development Bilingual in the Community Services and Parks Department. The position provides essential support in employment, training, and job placement and referrals through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act for the Workforce Development Division. Key responsibilities include preparing training agreements, monitoring participant progress, and facilitating support services for individuals and businesses involved in workforce grants and job placement programs. The department is seeking the commission's approval to recruit for this position on an open basis. It was last recruited on an open and promotional basis in 2018, and given the specialized requirements for this role, there are not enough qualified internal candidates who meet the minimum qualifications. Additionally, the department aims to hire individuals with bilingual fluency in English and Spanish to better serve the Spanish-speaking population applying for state grants. This will ensure the Workforce Development Division has the resources necessary to effectively meet their needs and the needs of our Spanish-speaking community. Aside from the bilingual fluency requirement, the job bulletin does fully align itself with the class specification for this position. The Glendale City Employees Association has reviewed the proposed open job bulletin and has not raised any concerns. Therefore, we recommend that the proposed open job bulletin for caseworker 1 bilingual be approved as submitted. We have our Workforce Development Administrator, Judith Velasco, here, along with HR staff, to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions?
I do have a question about the Spanish language requirement. I guess it's just from my own background information for this series of positions.
Sure.
Was the Spanish language requested because there's a large Spanish-speaking community that's not being serviced currently, or was it created because different caseworkers are hired with different language requirements, but the Spanish requirement is vacant?
Thank you, Commissioner. That's a great question. This is the first time we have requested a Spanish-only caseworker 1 position. In the past, we've had caseworker 1s and we've had Spanish-speaking caseworker 1s without advertising the bilingual. However, in the last 3 to 4 years, it's been very difficult to find individuals who speak both fluently English and Spanish as a caseworker. So currently we have 2 caseworker 1s and 1 caseworker 2 and a workforce development supervisor. Out of the current caseworker staff that works directly with the public, they do not speak Spanish.
So it's a need-based
It's a
requirement.
need-based. We are an employment center, Verdugo Job Center in south part of Glendale. Out of our enrolled participants, we have over 30% who are Spanish speaking. So we have made adjustments to our operations to still provide services, but we need a dedicated Spanish-speaking caseworker to work with our monolingual population.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
I do have one follow-up, if you may indulge me. Is 30% the highest percentage you have of a specific group of folks that speak bilingual language needs?
Thank you, Commissioner. That's a great question. That's an average amount.
Okay.
The enrollments really depend on the workforce grants we have available. So at any given time, we might have anywhere between 10 to actually 20 grants that are active, that we're actively recruiting. We have some grants that are specifically for English language learners. So when we have those grants available that target a monolingual population, then there is an increased need and demand to have staffing. So currently we do have different grants that target what we call populations that have multiple barriers to employment that prevent them from seeking employment, and that is one of the barriers that have been identified in our grants. So we are seeing more so than before more of an increased needs. And we do have current caseworkers that speak other languages, but we do not have a Spanish-speaking caseworker.
Can you let us know what other languages that they speak, the other caseworkers?
Sure.
Thank you.
And I don't want, I might ask my operations manager, because I don't want to miss out on any languages they speak. We do have individuals who speak Armenian, Farsi, Russian, and I want to say, is there one more that I missed? No?
Korean, perhaps?
No, we do not have a Korean speaker. However, we are co-located with the Employment Development Department, so I know many times they assist. We also have contracts with interpreting services. So as we see the demand and need, that's where we come with the request to serve the public in the best way possible.
Thank you.
That brings me to a follow-up question. When you have caseworkers who are not specifically hired with a language requirement perform interpretive services, do they get a bilingual bonus? I know the County of Los Angeles, when it asks, when employees are required to offer, for example, at some point I was fluent in four different languages, and I could provide services to all sorts of people. If I were not hired to provide those interpretive services, but I was asked to as part of my job and required to essentially to serve the community's needs, The question is, do your caseworkers who are hired without that language requirement component, are they paid extra as a bonus or something similar to the County of Los Angeles?
Yes, so my understanding, I've been with the city, this is my 17th year, and a lot of our staff have been with us 10 plus years. So if we see that they're using a specific language that's not English extensively, we refer them to our Human Resources Department. I believe they still do language testing for them to test the language skills. There's different levels, and based on their results, they do qualify for additional pay, is my understanding.
Very good. Kudos to you for 17 years of city employment.
Thank you.
I do have one final question. Do your caseworkers, do they have to drive?
Yes, they do. I'm
Thank
glad
you.
you asked. They do have to drive, and the reason they have to drive is, number one, we're an off-site location, so we are not, I always call this the main campus. We're not here located in City Hall. We are actually at another site, and part of their role as a caseworker is to do extensive outreach with our required partners. We are federally funded. Our required partners are education like Glendale Community College, Burbank Adult School, and different nonprofits. So they have to be able to travel to those partners.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion?
I will move to approve the job bulletin.
I will second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Tamian,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrabian,
Yes.
Chair Gazaria.
Yes, thank you. Next item, please.
Reports and information, employee job performance evaluations past due aging report.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you is an informational report on performance evaluation and the return status for City of Glendale's employees. As you can see, the response rate is very good, and there are no evaluations on the second notice list. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is a note and file item.
I do have a comment. Kudos for this. This looks amazing.
Thank you.
This is the lowest I've seen in the last year.
Absolutely. I'll ditto that. It's looking very good.
Thank you.
Something that inspires me to go back and do my outstanding PEs that I have waiting for me. Thank you so much.
I have
Thank
no
you.
comment. Next item, please.
Civil Service Commission staff comments.
I have no comment.
No comments.
No comments.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right.
Garo, we made it, Garo.
You guys, you guys.